The NEET Intel Summer Update presentation was originally a live stream on August 19th, 2025. The SKYMASTER forecast for August 20th, 2025 discussed during the presentation turned out to be correct, and the possible fake master of August 22nd, 2025 that was mostly missed is a good example of some of the challenges and limitations discussed.
All right, so it is the NEET Intel Summer Update, and a fair amount of this is going to sound like I'm doing unpaid advertising for Anthropic's Claude. But it was actually watching Sam Altman do his little summer update for OpenAI and ChatGPT last week, which pretty much was we're going to try and copy Claude's features and integrate them into ChatGPT. And I did get a chance to try out ChatGPT 5, and it really doesn't compare well. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Our financiers have legally demanded we make this. We may talk about this a little bit, but honestly, the folks who are supporting the project over on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, have always been very chill. I'll ask you them, anything you guys want, anything you need, what's working, never any responses. So in some sense, maybe I should be bothered by that. But you know what? If people are going to support the channel and not say too much, that's great. Especially when there are periods I'm just like, whatever. All right. What are we going to talk about today? Well, right off the bat, we're going to talk about what I assume some people will be tuning in for and what I think some people would assume I'd be doing a live stream about right now, which is that we do expect a SKYMASTER event tomorrow. I'm also going to, because it has been a while since you guys have heard from me last, give you a little bit of an update, and that'll kind of be the boring for investors business talk status update. How exactly is this project going? Because a few months ago I said I'm pretty much ready to, shut things down. So let's talk about that a little bit. And then to sort of capture your interest again, I'm going to show you some of the software. We're going to use this word software during this presentation. It's going to be a little bit of a reach, but I'm calling it software. Python scripts and an HTML file and a JavaScript. We're going to take a look at these things, show you how they work, and explain to you how you automate some of this stuff when it comes to actually looking at an EAM that you've bought to transcribe and say, okay, great, now what do I do with this thing? Let's start with the SKYMASTER event tomorrow. So SKYMASTER watch. I did post the bright yellow picture yesterday. I could have posted it sooner, but I'm pretty lax with this. But as announced yesterday, and I think PDGLS also posted about some of the airspace reservations, we are now expecting a SKYMASTER event tomorrow. And what exactly is going on? Well, right now up in Greenland, an E6 is currently at that Pacific Space Base in Greenland. And I didn't triple check this, but I did double check at least once yesterday. And Sipjack1776 over on X was pretty much the only person. So a few people posted about, including friend of the project Intel Frog, posted about how you had this E6 that was flying over Canada. And I thought, oh, thank goodness, finally they're just going to bomb Canada and we'll be done with it. Not the case. It was going to Greenland, and this is one of those things where we say, oh, is this a sign of a SKYMASTER event? Because there have been a few SKYMASTER events where an E6 flies over to Europe, and that's kind of our cue that one of these things is about to happen, or rather is already in progress. And as I have there in italics, it's also similar to July's Nothing Master on the 6th, maybe, where the E6 flew to the island in the middle of the Atlantic. And it did what we expect to do. We saw the flight paths, but we didn't hear anything. We'll talk about that a little bit. So we are kind of in that avenue of, SKYMASTER and also this kind of bleh. Keep that in mind. Now, if you take a look at that post, it says E6 AF83A7, and the call sign is a misspelled Chior07. And the way I always look at this stuff is, let's say I want to look some of this stuff up a few days or a few months later, or even a few years later. I'm not necessarily going to have a very fun or easy time using that hex code to find out where that E6 was on any given day, because it's not in air quotes, because I know some people get upset. It's not its static hex code. It's not the one it normally uses. And I don't think you can have much fun looking E6s up by call sign. I may be wrong, but as far as I know, if you tell me, oh, an E6 used this call sign sometime in August, I'm never going to find it or know where it was, especially when it's like, is it actually Chior? They don't need to be real words. They just need to be pronounceable. In this case, it's Chior, Chior. You could say it a few ways, but it's not a static call sign. But what am I getting to? Did actually find out its real hex code. So the Bald Geek has his Airframes website that tracks all the ACARS messages. And the last few months, I mean, the last 8 months really, the E6s have gotten into the habit of no longer using their real hex codes. And at the beginning, it wasn't too bad because they were still sending out ACARS messages. So if you really wanted to, for posterity's sake, figure out which E6 it was that you were interested in on any given day, you could cross-reference and kind of figure out, well, if this E6 took off from this location, took off from Tinker Air Force Base at 2 p.m. and I have an ACARS message showing something pinging about leaving Tinker at around 1:50, you can add 2 and 2 there. The last few months, they've stopped using ACARS very much, if at all. I'm losing you guys because this is really tedious letters and numbers you don't necessarily care about. We happen to know which E6 it is that's up there, so in the future, it may be easy to find that out. And as you can see with the ACARS message in the bottom, KTIC, I don't know if I can zoom in with PowerPoint. Oh, I can. Okay, cool. I'm using something new. So KTIC, that's the code for Tinker Air Force Base. And then BGTL, that, the second set of 4 characters, that is the code for Patuxent Space Base, or formerly Thule Air Force Base, or Thule Strategic Air Command. I don't know what it was called before. Thule was somewhere in there. I think Thule also used to be an HFGCS station, but I don't have that in front of me, and someone's going to get mad at me if I'm wrong. So let's just move on to talking more about the SKYMASTER that we're expecting tomorrow, and less boring you about, the trivial minutia. So I think this is also what PDGLS posted about, but as you can see, this was posted on the 17th and the 18th respectively, which is why over the weekend on X, I started teasing you guys and saying, oh, is something happening? Is there going to be a happening? And as we'll mention shortly, I was actually teasing you a lot longer, whether you realize it or not. But we do have on the left for that little region to the west of California, it's going to start August 20th, 1500, and the last until 300 the next day. We'll look at, what those times are for actual real people time zones shortly, as well as for east of New York, pretty much the exact same time frame. And I think that for a while has been what people have been using as a cue to tell, a few days ahead of time that, oh, looks like there's going to be a SKYMASTER event. But I actually knew sooner than August 4th, but I posted about it over on X on August 4th saying that there's probably going to be a SKYMASTER event on either August 20th or the 27th. And there's that post. Now, you may be looking at that post and saying, well, hold on, friend, because that doesn't say there's maybe a SKYMASTER event on August 20th. That says ACXCLTGEKHV FWFJDSON Yes Wony Sony Yes Wony MMVOCFBE. And I'm going to tell you no, because not only does it say ACXCLTGEKHVFWFJD Sony Yes Wony MMVO CFBE. It also has a picture of Airi Taniguchi of Sakurazaka 46. And if you're clever, you will recognize the Airi Taniguchi of Sakurazaka 46 is the key to decode the message. And when you put that, or even just ask Claude, ChatGPT, or any AI to do it for you, you get August 20, or else the 27th. Now, if anyone had replied to that post, even starting to solve any part of that message, I would have helped them out, but nobody even tried. I'm a little disappointed, but this is what's keeping this project interesting for me. I think it's adorable, and I think the fact that it says Sony Yes Wony in the message when I encoded it or encrypted or whatever the right word is, I was like, that's too good. So why did I take you on this tangent? Because you can wait for the Noticed Airman, or you can decode mysterious messages by NEET Intel. The other thing, sometimes I get bored and go check 4chan. SKG doesn't really exist as a thread anymore. NEET Intel is now showing up on 4chan posts now and again over on Poll. And it was a totally nonsense thread, but I loved that the reply had K-pop, so I figured I would put something productive. And on July 31st, I pretty much said SKYMASTER is probably coming back soon. So why do I say that? Well, we've seen these slides a few times now, but when I started tracking SKYMASTER events in 2023, and then kept tracking them 2024 and into 2025, we noticed some routines. So in 2023, we had a SKYMASTER on a Wednesday in August. Same thing in 2024. We had a SKYMASTER in a Wednesday in August. When we get to 2025 has been a kind of year for SKYMASTER events. We had the big January SKYMASTER that probably happens every January. April was okay. And there's supposed to be a second SKYMASTER in April, and we didn't hear anything. Although I do still think it happened. I have a whole video about that. We had a May, smaller SKYMASTER. We pretty much expected that. And then last month's Fake Master, as I have there, it was pretty much a letdown. So it hasn't been a great year for SKYMASTER events. But you had a SKYMASTER event in August 2 years ago. You had a SKYMASTer in August a year ago. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Probably going to have a SKYMASTER in August of this year as well. And as I put there on the side, it's either going to be on the 3rd or the 4th Wednesday of the month. And that is how you get August 20 or else the 27th. Now, let's go on. What to expect? As mentioned, NEET 6 is currently in Pituffik Space Base in Greenland. The important part here is to understand that NEET 6 is currently in Pituffik Space Base in Greenland. This is not great. If you're interested in listening to this or monitoring it, I have a feeling this may actually kind of suck. I say this because I have it there for you on the slide, but flight tracker coverage may be poor or non-existent. So ADS-B exchange did not manage to follow the E6 all the way to Pituffik Space Base. It cuts off somewhere, I don't know, the Hudson Bay of Canada, some north. Basically, its feeders lost track of it. It didn't manage to pick it up when it landed in Greenland. SDR coverage of Greenland is probably not great. Well, there are no SDRs in Greenland. There are no SDRs in, I think it's Nunavut, that part of Canada it's called. It's a territory. It's not a real province. Nobody lives there. So, of course, there are no SDRs there. But there are some SDRs close by in Iceland, and I expect tomorrow those SDRs probably aren't going to pick anything up. And also, there's going to be 20 people competing for those SDR slots. There's only so many SDRs in Iceland, and I won't even be able to get them up on stream. Could be wrong about that. I could be a bit too pessimistic there, but this is one of those things where I've said, one of the things that ticks me off is when I see an SDR and there's 5 people. Well, there's 4. Most of them have 4 slots. So I'm exaggerating. 4 slots, 4 people. They're all tuned to HFGCS frequencies, and nobody's sharing any recordings. They're not, because they never do. They never share any recordings. They never post anything. What are you doing? But the other thing here, not only is it a similar situation to April's Fake Master, it's probably an even closer situation to last month's Nothing Master or Fake Master, whatever the heck we were calling it, the E6 over, and I really hope I've been saying Azores correctly and continue to say Azores correctly. We just may not be in a good position to hear much of this. Now, let me just take a moment, because I am rambling, to check some of the comments. Philip Collier is asking, NEET, do these SKYMASTER exercises get folded into larger USS, NATO, or joint events? This is something we've talked about before, but SKYMASTER events, I made that name up, right? That's not really what the US military is probably calling them. It might be, but I actually doubt it. These are most likely part of larger US STRATCOM exercises, and actually probably part of the end. The exercise that it's part of is already in progress, is my suspicion. For the last few days at least, a major war game has been going on. And usually these strange radio calls, I shouldn't say usually because I'm not sure, but this is kind of the thing that I'm really starting to suspect. And we can maybe brainstorm what may be going on there a little bit more later on. But yeah, SKYMASTER event is part of a larger exercise. Almost certainly that's a reasonable assumption or thing to suspect. And then a little bit less clear, but I do suspect this is probably the end of the exercise when you get to this point. Sean, will we hear this call sign SKYMASTER? So this is what I'm saying. In terms of what to expect, maybe not. So April 30th was a Nothing Master, and I am convinced, but by the way, all of these terms are made up, right? SKYMASTER, Nothing Master, Mini SKYMASTer. These are gibberish terms, but they have practicality, so I keep using them. But Nothing Master, we did not hear SKYMASTER calls on the HFGCS. We didn't really hear anything interesting that day. But if you look at the radio activity leading up to, I was pretty much able to tell you, the days leading up to April 30th, what radio activity is going to be like, because it was very similar to April 2000 and why did those all say 24? Those should say 25. I hope that's not confusing anyone. There we go. We didn't hear SKYMASTER on April 30th, but I don't remember exactly when it started, but the days leading up to were acting exactly like a major military exercise. I was pretty much, if you're following me on X, I was posting about it saying, this is what's probably going to happen today. This is probably what's going to happen today. And at some point, I think I even said, we're probably going to have an E6 fly over the Utah or the Nevada test and training range and actually happen. And I'm like, there's 100% going to be a SKYMASTER event on April 30th. And we didn't hear anything. And I'm convinced either we missed it, like they were using a different frequency, or they were just broadcasting from a different location and nobody was checked. I don't know what happened there. As far as I know, like, I'm happy to admit, 2024, February 7th, the February SKYMASTER, I was asleep for that. But there were at least a few, like, people posted like 2 recordings of like B-52 traffic of probably, like hundreds. And it's like, wow, great. Thanks. Thanks guys. That's why I get angry when they take up SDR slots. But anyways, it's not that. It's not me pretending that it didn't happen because I didn't catch it. It's just as far as I know, nobody heard anything, but I'm convinced that something happened. Last month, the Fake Master, again, we didn't hear SKYMASTER, and I don't know about that one because, again, it's just, you have it in this island in the middle of the Atlantic. You have the E6 doing the maneuvers, but are there? I don't think there were SDRs nearby. Nothing with the the E6s over the continental US. I don't know. So that's very much in terms of what to expect. I don't know if we're going to hear anyone say SKYMASTER tomorrow. I'm expecting it, but it's been a weird year. This is a slide. This is, I think, the last time you guys heard me put together a video for you back in May, and I'm pretty sure I talk in this one if I don't completely offload it to AI. But I think it's about 20 or 30 minutes, and I explained to you why I'm convinced that something happened on April 30th, even though I don't have any recordings to share with you guys or anything like that. This slide is just grabbing, I just talked about this, the February 7th, 2024 SKYMASTER event. That's the one where I was asleep, that I was just talking to you guys about. The SDR is located in the US. We picked up, more traffic than usual, but we don't think we heard anyone say SKYMASTER or anything like that. But a couple of recordings were posted, and I'm like, you guys probably caught like 1% of the traffic, and that was it. So that's why, when I see these people taking up SDR, so it's a hobby and people can do what they want, but it's like, man, oh man, it drives me nuts. What to expect anyways. August 20th, 2025, if you want to tune into the HFGCS, so based on the airspace reservations, I think those could be dummy reservations, but it does give you some idea of the time frame. So 1400 or 1500 on August 20th could start around then. It could take a few hours and potentially last as late as 300 on August 21st. Not necessarily. And it says right there, depending on your time zones, if you are on the East Coast of the United States, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. If you are on the West Coast, 7 a.m. Through 8 p.m. If you're Central or Mountain Time, you guys do the math. So let's say you're in a similar situation. It turns out to kind of be You may still hear like more EAMs than usual. It may be very obvious that there's, some kind of exercise or something going on. And you may luck out and hear some interesting messages, even if you're just using an SDR. You have your own shortwave radio. You're located in the US. It's a better day than usual. These are the more interesting days, even if we're not necessarily expecting to hear SKYMASTER. We're hoping. We're thinking it's possible, but we're not so sure. And E6 activity may occur in the Pacific Gulf and Atlantic, so I think there is now also an airspace reservation for the Gulf. I believe, going off memory, I didn't have time to prepare slides, I ran out of time. The July SKYMASTER, like the one from last month with the E6 in the Atlantic, around the same time there were airspace reservations in the Pacific, I think just the Pacific, and it was like 12 hours, but no E6, as far as I saw or heard, I think actually went out there and took advantage of. That may be some procedural thing that they do. I don't know. I think that gives you at the least a cue of the time of this thing, but not necessarily a cue that yes, an E6 is definitely going out there to take advantage of that, 12-hour or 13-hour airspace reservation. One other thing to expect, if we do hear SKYMASTER on the radio tomorrow, listen folks, I spent today putting this presentation together, and I spent my weekend preparing some of the stuff we're going to look at later in this presentation. I didn't have time to make the nice thumbnails that I usually like to do. So it's just going to be, if we hear SKYMASTER, I'm quickly going to slap together white text, red background, It'll say SKYMASTER because we heard SKYMASTER, and that stream will go live. That's how it'll work. Set your expectations for that. Earlier, we had the yellow thumbnail, and now we'll have the red thumbnail. And you guys, if you've been following this channel long enough, you know what these colors mean. If you've not, you're going to get mad at me for using these colors, and I barely use them, okay? And people click them. Like, the difference when you do A/B testing, I did this with another project, between a big red thumbnail with white text and any other kind of it's asinine. People are like bulls. They see red and they run for it. Anyhow, that we just went through part 1 of our summer update. We talked about the SKYMASTER event tomorrow. Look forward to it, or don't. I don't know. Do what you want. And now this is the part 4. Like I said, this is the boring business part for investors or anyone interested. Do a status update. What's the channel like right now? Just a quick overview of what it's been like over the last few months. And then we'll stick around. I do think everyone will find the part after that interesting. I'll try and keep this, light. Let's start to talk about the X, formerly doing business or formerly known as Twitter. So people didn't really jump on me for this. I thought they would, but we are officially in the blue check era of NEET Intel. And if you remember, like 2 years ago, I was much more excited about the prospect of, getting a blue check verified and monetization when it came to X and sharing information. And 2 years later, or whatever the time frame was, that I actually get it and get monetized, I thought, oh, I actually have no optimism about this. But I'm assuming you're familiar. But on June 14th, a 246 character EAM was broadcast. And if you remember what was going on around June 14th, everyone was expecting the US to directly intervene against Iran. They had the bombers stationed at Diego Garcia, and there people on X and on Poll and on YouTube, they're just sniffing for any clue that something was about to happen. And this 246 character EAM broadcast on that day, and Scent Defender is one of those big OSINT accounts, and thanks to them very much for reposting it. Because I did end up getting, I think, 5 million views in a single day. And if you ever have a post that gets 5 million views in a single day, that's pretty much your cue that buying premium is worth it, because you will at least pay for the cost of premium in terms of the ad revenue that you make from that. So that worked out. And what also worked out, I was very happy about this. You guys know I'm in the habit of putting things, K-pop or J-pop, in the background of the graphics that I present. And not only was it a big win for me, it was a big win for Sakura Zaka 46, because you had Airi Taniguchi in the background of it, along with Matono Mio, but I've taken to calling it the Airi Taniguchi EAM because you very clearly see her on the right side there. And this did very well. In terms of media appearances that, my project has gotten, very few. Now, some of these are sort of like article farms or something, like someone's, not even article farms, but like, someone sells their story to one website, it gets put through translators, and then it ends up on a few other websites. But on the top left, NEET Intel and Airi Taniguchi show up on Serbian news. Bottom left, I think Czech, the gatewaybundit.com. I don't know what that is, but it sounds, real. Bottom middle showed up there as well. And this got coverage pretty much everywhere. I think MSNBC ended up posting about this, among other websites. Some of them omitted the transcription, and more particularly, even if they included the transcription, they omitted the Airi Taniguchi image. And I'm like, well, screw you. So I was disappointed by that, but, obviously, if someone's repackaging the news or information in a more palatable form, they run with that as well. And not everything on the screen is from this year, but it's nice to see, some of my posts will end up showing up on Korean websites. And there's also a website, cryptomuseum.com, which was nice enough at some point to include one of my videos as a source of information, and they put that the KY100 was used. I don't know what that means, but sure. Glad that I was able to be a resource for them for that. So very excited by that, and obviously, that blowing up as big as it did meant very, very exciting day. But just for anyone curious about how blue checks work and how NEET Intel does, outside of that, spike 2 days in a row with over 5 million, it's been pretty blessed since then. There's been no subsequent payouts since that, covering the cost of a year of premium and then some, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, that's the status, the current situation with the monetized X account. For anyone curious, I figured I would share that. YouTube. Let's talk about the YouTube. Now and again, sometimes people will ask me, and you guys probably know this or even wonder yourself, what's with the K-pop and J-pop time cards? Why don't you just post compilation of all the EAM? And I've always said this is very time consuming to put together, even editing this. So these 3 videos that I did, I basically took like those 12-hour live streams from the overnight, and instead of leaving them up as 12-hour overnights, I took them and either cut out the dead air or like kind of did a effect, spent time editing it to sort of like fast forward through it. And those, that 49-minute video, the 12-minute video, and the 24-minute video, those represent the actual traffic during 12-hour intervals on August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And they did okay. 109 views, 259 views, 138 views. You're probably going to point out these get more views than some of the recent time cards. However, these take a lot longer to put together than the time cards, and I don't have fun doing them. They suck. It's very tedious and stuff I already know, and I don't rewatch these myself because I've already gone through them. So they need to do a lot better. I think one of these made like 10 cents for it to make sense. So there you go. And I even did clickbait. I called it Lost Media because the kids like Lost Media. Oh, there we go. I already jumped to the next slide. So I figured in the interest of transparency, you guys probably have seen that the channel now runs ads. And I figured it'd be very straightforward with you guys about why that's happened and what the actual amount is. Over on Patreon, I have a few people that are fairly generous with, sponsoring the project. And that's one of those things where I'm like, it makes sense to keep coming back to this. Even when there's times that, I'm not as interested or whatever the case is. And everyone there is very, very relaxed. No one says too much. And one of the larger sponsors just dropped out cold. And that's alongside, this has not been a great year for this project in terms of wider interest. So I decided to blow up with the Ari Taniguchi EAM. It's been significantly less, revenue for this. And when I do things like spend today, putting a project together and the weekends, putting some of the stuff we'll take a look at together. It doesn't make sense. So I had to start running ads to make up for that one person dropping out. And then I think one person may have lowered their contribution because I started running ads. So we're pretty much still behind. But anyways, so you guys are aware, that's the rationale. And you can see some of the metrics are down. And that's the actual amount of money I'm making running ads. I don't think it's worth it. I think it would have made more sense if more people wanted to be supporters of the project. But we've been doing this for a while now, and that's the way the cookie crumbled. We'll be doing that going forward. But actually, keeping the thing afloat and keeping, me sinking time into this as much as I do, I did want to shout out our folks on Patreon. So the one person who was always SKYMASTER tier and for some reason didn't want to be credited, that problem has now solved itself. But Paul remains on the SKYMASTER tier, and over on the Octopus tier, we have Aaron and Espresso. We have a couple people on Supporter. If it's important for you to get credited, please jump up to the Octopus or higher tier. I cannot tell you because it starts to sound like whining the unreasonable amount of time that I do spend on this project now and again, even if it isn't obvious. And on the Up North tier, Up North pretty much, is the single largest sponsor over here on YouTube by a country mile. So he remains forever on the Up North tier. What are you guys paying for, by the way? The NEET Intel impact. So I figured I'd give you guys numbers and letters. We have 10,000 EAMs transcribed. So earlier this year, I announced that I had tried to transcribe 10,000 EAMs. And I looked at the data, and there were a couple where I realized, actually, no, I've either lifted this from other databases or I lifted them from the YouTube chat box. And at some point last year, I realized that some of the YouTube chat box transcriptions were not very accurate. I couldn't use them for time cards because I wasn't happy with, the error rate. Not that my error rate is flawless, but yeah, thanks to last month and this month where I did full-time transcriptions, we have now actually broken where it's me not lifting from anywhere else or borrowing things or anything like that. I now have 10,000 EAMs credited to me, so that's well over 9,000. We have 336 daily time cards published, plus, 100-ish daily compilations. Some of those are not really fully daily. I didn't even bother to try and calculate how many hours of recordings of, the HFG PCS we have up on the channel. As far as letters, the January SKYMASTER was a decent coverage event. We just talked about the Irie Taniguchi EAM and global coverage, something that I didn't prepare slides for, but could have remarked on more if I had time. The Midnight Hammer time card, that is for June 21st, I believe. Let me check that. But on June 21st, that was Operation Midnight Hammer. That's when you had both the B-2 decoy flight over the Pacific, and then you actually secretly had the B-2s over the Atlantic that flew over to Iran and hit those depots, or didn't hit the... I mean, we're not going to get into that here, but that was the operation. And if you look at the June 21st time card and the timing of the EAM broadcast, and you look at the published timetable of events that the Secretary of Defense presented to the public, it's very uncanny. I wrote a post about it on X. Of all the time cards I've put together, that is probably the most consequential one, at least in terms of what I can be confident that, like, oh, this was a real operation. These messages clearly map to that. And then birthday time card, it's the actual very next day, June 22nd, happens to right now be my favorite time card for reasons I think I describe in the description of that video. If you look it up, you can find out why that is. And as we looked at earlier, NEET Intel is now showing up on poll without, me astroturfing it. So yippee, thank you. I did include this on the right. If you just, you don't have to watch the full SKYMASTER coverage of January 8th, but I did a recording roundup video, and I thought it was very, very interesting. There's a part during this live stream where, like in real time, I am talking you through it and almost bragging about the fact that I can tell you this E6 is over here using this hex sign, broadcasting these EAMs. This E6 is over here, broadcasting these messages under this call sign, and giving you like a timetable of events and like live coverage. And then if you look through some of the actual videos that I upload to this channel, where I actually like talk through and do commentary, the next video is me complaining about the E6 is now flying dark and being hard to find their time codes, their hex codes, and I can't tell what's going on with the E6s anymore. They're not using ACARs as much, so that part of someone who looks at that wants to look at that and think, did NEET Intel just ruin this for everyone? Like, did he get so cocky? But I think what actually happened is just, again, over the last few years, there has been more of an interest in using flight trackers anyways. So I think I just happen to be in position to capture the last clear one. But we'll see what happens with the SKYMASTERs for the balance of this year. And I think the real tell would be what happens at the probably massive size January 2026 SKYMASTER event. Is it still, hard to tell who's what, when, and where, or does it go back to normal? We'll see. Next part of the presentation, and I hope that I have lined this all up correctly, we do want to take a look at some software demos. So for anyone who has no familiarity with Python and has no idea what they're looking at right now, Thonny is an IDE for Python, which is a programming language. I don't even remember what IDE stands for. You don't need to know what IDE stands for, actually, to use scripts like this. But these are basically scripts, and you can run them. You go over and you click run script, and it'll tell you, this is a script that I asked Claude to put together for me to encode or decode text using the Vignere cipher. So let's do this. Let's actually go and grab that text here. This is the text that we want to decode. So we entered the message. Now it's saying enter the key. So go and grab that as well. And it asks, do we want to encode or decode? Well, obviously I want to decode, so I enter 2. And if you can see that on the bottom, hope you can see that on the bottom. You may need to use a magnifying glass or something, but it's legible enough. So this is what you can use any programming language for. If you're watching this right now, I'm assuming I've not lost your attention because you have some level of familiarity with this. But if you don't, you're afraid to say anything right now, you're watching the replay and you're intimidated, you don't need any advanced knowledge for this. But we're not going to go through all of these scripts. Some of these are just dumb things that I put together myself to practice learning how categories and whatever lists are made. But here are some of the scripts that I use: EAM character frequency analysis, EAM line graph, EAM replicate, EAM slider, EAM time card. Because what I've said a few times to some folks who monitor the HFGCS and transcribe a bunch of these messages, that's great. But like, do you ever look at these? And for a while, the running answer was, no, that's illegal. You'll go to prison if you even so much as like try to do any sort of analysis of an EAM. Or they would kind of jump and be like, you can't break these. It's impossible. There's no point even trying it. There's a lot of leeway between totally trying to crack these and trying to analyze them. So these are the scripts that I've put together these last few months, partly thanks to ChatGPT and mostly thanks to Claude, who really the last few weeks I've started using it, has been fantastic, that lets you take this database, like I said, of 10,000 EAMs and start to look through them. And I'll show you guys some examples. You've occasionally seen some of the output over on X or things, but I want to go through these one by one so you guys understand what these things look like. Now, this monstrosity is 700 lines long. This doesn't need to be 700 lines long. I sort of made it user friendly. There's nice terminal inputs. This one, this is, I think, the worst one. It's over 1,000 lines. That one, I don't even care. This one's pretty short. It's just 159 lines. This is 372. Most of them are fairly light, and if they're bloated, it's either because this one, the 10,000 line one does two different things. But let's just look at one of these. Let's start with the start. We'll go through them in alphabetical order. EAM character frequency analysis. Now, you guys may or may not already be familiar with this, but when I point this out to people, for the first time, they're always surprised by it. So what is this script doing? Well, I run this, and when I have this set up, I just run it by clicking run or pressing Command R. And it tells me down here, I tell you what, let's do something just for the moment. I'm sure people can read what's going on at the bottom. Technically, for now, you don't need to worry so much about what the actual script looks like. Successfully loaded 11,000 rows from my set. Found masters with forbidden digits, so you guys should know their EAMs do not include the numbers 0, 1, 8, or 9, and that'll tell me, what days are these that have these messages that shouldn't be there. But those are filtered out. Another thing I do is I have a column that I use if message gets disregarded. I just add a slash, so that's just a filter out for disregards. This is a filter for messages that aren't fully done. This is anything. It just filters out any invalid messages. That's what this is doing. So I end up with a data set of 6,000 unique messages. And by the way, there is still 10,000 EAMs transcribed. There's just any duplicates also get removed. And what this thing lets me do is I can analyze all of these EAMs to look at how often numbers, letters, any of these combinations are showing up. Let's just actually use this sucker. Enter a number to analyze digit sequences of that length. Enter any letter to analyze alphabet frequencies. So let's just look at letters. I want to know how often are various letters showing up in EA. So any letter, you can enter A, B, whatever. It just needs to be a single character. I put in R. Now, the terminal, if we can go back to that, and PowerPoint's working, it prints out percents for me. Tells me the most frequent letters showing up in EAMs, tells me the least frequent letters that are showing up in EAMs. But you also, hopefully this is working. There we go. So it did spit out, it took me a moment to get it on screen for you, but it generated this chart for me. All those percentages and numbers and whatever, it made a nice picture for me. And I also had it do some standard deviation stuff. So all of the letters, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z show up about equally to each other. So it's apparently random. Except M, right in the middle there, is used significantly less, past the point of random chance. That's the lower bound of the standard deviation. That's why it's highlighted in red. M is used significantly less than other characters in EAMs. And this observation is made both in smaller data sets, it's made in larger data sets. Anyone who's ever sat down and looked at these and ran any basic sort of how often are numbers and letters appearing, they notice M shows up less often. Now, that concluded it. That's sort of our output for this script. This is a lot of stuff. As I mentioned, this thing is 700 lines long. I asked Claude to clean up the script a little bit. I did a little bit. This used to be a lot longer. I do know some Python, like I don't stare this like a total idiot, but you don't need to worry about that so much. It's bad. If you're an actual programmer, you may look at some of these and get angry. If you're an average person, you don't need to worry. But let's run this again. What else can I do with this? Enter a number to analyze digit sequences of that length. I don't actually know what the hell this means. I forget. Let's just say 1. Frequency of one-digit numbers with statistical analysis. What does this mean? Okay, sorry, I'm a moron. So there you go. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the number analysis, and you can see the red bar 5. 5 is showing up a lot less than you expect. It is doing what I need it to do. It is still working. Okay, so that's the same thing. So in terms of how often numbers show up in EMs, 5 for some reason shows up less often than the others. What else can this script do? Because it printed out a bunch of stuff in the terminal. Enter any 2-character combination to analyze all 2-character combinations. So anything. If you enter 1 letter, it's going to tell you how often characters from A through Z are showing up in your data set. But let's say you want to know how often is AB or other 2-character combinations showing up. For some things, because if you think about it, there are a lot of different possible 2-letter combinations. I think that would be very messy to create a chart of. So it's just going to give you a terminal printout. If you wanted to, you could rework the script to say, give me charts of some kind anyways, but as you can see, there's a lot of possible combinations of things. But it will tell you outliers, and it should be no surprise that things with M and 5 are showing up a lot less. But also you can see a few random things are showing up here that you wouldn't necessarily expect. So that's something someone may be interested in. What else can the script do? We run it again. Enter asterisk to analyze characters appearing that many times consecutively. So in other words, this is saying how often does AA show up? How often does AAA show up? BBB, any repetitions? So let's say, how often do things show up 5 times in a row? It gives me a chart. There are 3 instances of unique messages where G is in it 5 times in a row. There are 3 messages where J is in a message 5 times in a row. And then these ones in blue are numbers. The green ones are letters. But as you can see, not very often. When you consider that this is out of 10,000 messages or 6,000 unique messages, that's sort of your thing. I don't think the statistical analysis is actually considering this is out of that many messages, but I'm not a stats guy anymore. I used to be, but I don't remember any of it. What else can we take a look at? Let's do enter. This is the last one we'll look at, and we'll move on to the other scripts. Enter X underscore, where X is any letter number, to see what characters appear after X. In other words, what this is saying is, if we're assuming that these things are like random or pseudo-random, then after pick any letter of the alphabet or pick any number, everything appearing afterwards should also be random. I shouldn't be able to predict what letter is most likely to come after. So let's just try that. A, give me a chart. What character is most likely to show up after A? Well, right off the top, you have another A is most likely. That's interesting. Overall, all the way on the right, you have these 2 red bars that are way out of whack from what you would statistically expect. But we already know 5 and M are weird statistical outliers, so that shouldn't surprise us too much. A, X, Z, and 2 are most likely to appear after A. I don't think you can do too much with that. It's just barely outside of, the stats that's being calculated here. What else can we do? What's the character most likely to show up after B? I'm assuming it's going to be B. For some reason, it's very likely to be B. I didn't actually look at this before. And I guess K is statistically significant as well. And then obviously over on the right, 5 and M are unlikely to appear, but that's because for some bizarre reason, 5 and M are very unlikely to appear in messages. So you have that. That's some of the stuff you can look at. You can also do that with the numbers. What comes after 3? Another 3, very likely to be another 3. Okay, we're sort of learning that's a thing here. How about 6? There you go. It's likely to be followed by another 6. And if you think about the long EAMs and those duplicates that are showing up, that starts to make sense, though it would bring it ever so slightly out of stats. So this is just like a basic bare bones script. Like, this is not meant to be a full thing, but it gives you some leads, gives you some things to look at, some things of interest, and you can see things you can do otherwise. Instead of checking what letter is most likely to appear afterwards, you can see what letter is most likely to appear before. Then there are also some modifiers to include the first 2 characters, to exclude strings some things you can do there. That's that script. That's one of the things that you can use to get an idea, what do EAMs look like. If you've transcribed, dozens, hundreds, thousands of these, you start to want to, run stuff like this. The next script, so this I mentioned, this is 1,000 lines of code. This is a monstrosity. I actually had to pay for Claude to be able to handle this with any level of efficiency, but the output of this should be familiar to some of you folks. So let's run this, and this has like a terminal output, but let's just go ahead. Input null for express mode, in other words, just hit enter. So it generates this for me. What this script is doing right now, it's saying, what is the current month or the most recent month in the data set, and spits me out this timeline. So this is showing me what time of day our semester is being broadcast. And I haven't finished entering, Tuesday, August 19th yet. So don't look at that one so much. But in terms of what I have so far for August 2025, that's what it looks like. That's when messages are being broadcast. That is also the type of messages, and I started using that this year, and I realized very quickly I didn't want to plot that manually, and the AI could help me put this together, and that's what it's done. If I close this window, the script instantly loads this for me. This is a nice bar chart. I used to do these manually, so I did a few reports last year that I published here on YouTube and over on X, and they would include these charts, and I would make them manually by hand. And it was a pain in the ass and very time consuming. And now finally, I have it nicely put together for me. When I say manually by hand, I was previously using Excel, actually messing with the set of messages so that they could be graphed. It's hard to explain, but it was very tedious. I found like the most difficult way to do it, but I insisted on it because it made my messages look nice, or the graphs look nice, the way I wanted them to look. So that's what that looks like. And I just generated that in 2 minutes, not even. All I had to do was click run, hit enter, it spit that one out, I closed it, spit that one out, I closed it. There you go. So 10,000 lines, sorry, not 10,000, 1,000 lines, but it's very well worth it. Now, as I mentioned, some of these things, I have these nice terminal readouts that gives me options. If I input null, it processes the most recent month in the data set. It includes all duplicate messages, it includes all disregards. Something else I can do. Now, this is a bit of a goofy one, but there's kind of a convention that I have with my messages. Percent re-includes percent lines and mangled prefixes. So if you look at the way I define groups and prefixes, we'll just look at this quickly. Like the little legend over on the right, like group 1 messages are AASE, group 2 is MP, yada. These are all 2 characters. What happens if a operator broadcasts the first character and then disregards? This is going to break my chart. Potentially. I could have just done a quick exclude so it doesn't, cause a mess with error handling. But I just said for some reason, for whatever reason, if you wanted to re-include those, what does that look like? And you'll see uncategorized. So you won't be able to see it on screen. It's going to be too small and the contrast will be too low. But August 4th at 6 o'clock, open the Excel file. Can you guys see that? Yes. August 4th at 6 o'clock. So they just instantly disregarded the message on that day. It's right there, 5:59, pool hall. They said who they were, but then they disregarded the message. So that potentially breaks things. You're unlikely to need to re-include them, but the option exists. All right, what else can I do with this script? Run it again. BW for special options. Now, this BW is going to look a little bit different from the BW that you guys may see, but it re-enables grayscale compatibility. So if I type this in theory, for some reason, if you want to print this out, or if you're using this on a 2-color monitor, or if you're living with vision impairments of some kind, I thought I should set this up. So this is black and white mode for, in theory, if you want to print it out on a black and white printer. And instead of everything being the exact same shape, which is a pain, everything has its own shape. So group 1 messages are now circle, group 2 is a square, group 3 is a triangle. There's kind of a logic to that if you think about it. And then group 4 is a 5-pointed star, so all the logic goes out the window. And the black and white mode, now this looks ridiculous, but you can mess with it in the script if you wanted. Now, if you think about this, if you actually had a black and white mode, You wouldn't want to print this out because look at how much black ink you'd be using. We'll mention this later, but if you look at the link to the script in the description, when you download it and use it, I did a last minute rejig for the public release that should run for you and have a white background. So black text on a white background. But we're jumping ahead there. These are really simple things that I've done here. When I run it, I can either enter instantly and generates for me, or I can use these two modifiers. Or if I wanted to, for some reason, I either, want to put disregarded messages back in, choosing whether to exclude disregards, choosing whether to exclude duplicates. Maybe you just want to get rid of all the duplicates, or maybe you want to look at a different month. This will let you do that. So as long as you enter anything other than null, like if you don't just press enter, you don't type %enter, you don't type BW enter. You type anything and hit enter, you'll enable detailed options mode. And you may want to use this script. You will have opportunities to use this script very soon, so you may want to take notes on some of how this works. Although I do think the console is very straightforward for you. And it'll tell you. So when you enable detailed options, it found however many lines that have that backslash indicating that a message has been disregarded. And you can either input null to include them or input X to exclude them. I want them out of there. Found 4231 lines of duplicate messages. This represents 35% of the current data. Input null to include these lines or input X to exclude them. Duplicate messages are fine. I want them in there. Now, what I want to do, the console has told me all of the available data by month and by, year and then month. And if I want something by default, it'll just spit me out August. But let's say, what month has the most? Let's look at a month that I know I did exhaustively. October of last year. Now, when you read through this, it's going to tell you how exactly to enter this. But if you want a month, you just enter the year and then the month, and then you hit enter. So this is now the chart for October 2024. And it does the next one for you. Perfect. And if you remember, that is when the nuclear execution reports went out, and it generates that for you. Some of the other options, we'll just go through these quickly. I just want to look at, the last week of messages. What's the last week of messages? 25/08/12, 25/08/19. I want that period of time inclusive. There you go. It's essentially zooming in. And the other thing, I don't think we even talked about this. Does it let me zoom in? There's a way to zoom in with this. But, there we go. You can screw around with this stuff. It lets you do that. You can zoom, whatever. That's something for you guys to mess around with if you're so interested. This, I don't think, has a zoom in option. Okay, it does, but it really doesn't need it. What else can you do with this? There's one other option we can look at quickly in case you may be so interested. So anything to enter detailed mode. Let's say I want to do this month, but I didn't like those markers. Now you'll have to look through the code to understand what some of the marker options are. So some level of fluency is here. On line 36, it's giving you these marker options. And let's just use one of them. This vertical line, 25/08 vertical line. Now instead of diamonds, it's using vertical lines. You may prefer that for some reason. This chart remains unaltered. I couldn't think of any useful options, so I didn't add things just for the sake of adding things. 25, I have to enter anything here, and then 25/08, the star. Wahoo, everything's stars now. So I've gone through this very quickly because I don't know how many people are watching, and I don't know how captivating a presenter I am. 1,000 lines of code. It's worth it. This is very good. It lets you very quickly graphically present things. EAM replicate. This is 150 lines. This is fairly straightforward. We can blast through this in a second. So this is saying the most recent day in the data set, find me positions that are repeating. That's fine. So a lot of these are going to be coincidental, but all this is telling me is that N6 shows up in this message twice. There's an N6 there. There's an N6 there. There's a repeat. This is the exact same message, so it's just the same thing again. There's an H4 there. There's an I don't really care necessarily. I may look around, like here, QEH4IR. Is this QEH4IR? No, it's not. So it's a prompt to start looking around. What I can do now is instead pick another day. What about the day before? Now this ends up being possibly more helpful. 250801, 250802, FG7, FG7, FG7. Possibly related, possibly coincidental. What you're getting here is just a basic scanning a message to see if any strings show up twice, because it's better to do this not by hand or by eye, because you'll just miss things or find false positive even when you spend time staring at things. It'll just do it for you, and it's very easy. 159 lines. You download this script, you have your spreadsheet set up correctly, and it'll do it for you. EAM slider. This is one that is very, very interesting. Now, so I've done this a few times now. If you look at these two messages, they both begin with R2, and then you compare them, you'll notice like a bunch of sequence similarities. You see this message has 4 Ds in a row, 4 U's in a row, 4 M's in a row, 4 7's in a row, 4 K's in a row. Scroll down, 4 Ds in a row, 4 U's in a row, 4 M's in a row, 4 7's, 4 K's, 4 E's. I'm temporarily going to show the cursor, and I can't do this very long because OBS hates doing this, but so that you know what I'm saying. D, 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 U, 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 etc. what I just said. But here's the other thing that you may not notice right away. For WSC, under the 4 Ds, for 7 WSC. UUUU, KEUE. They both have that as well. And when you start to notice this, you start to say, well, what the heck else is in common? That is what this script is for. EAM slider. You run this. What it's done, I made a nice, little console printout. It'll either, if you want to look at something recently, you grab this, or you can enter any prefix if you happen to know one. Like if I wanted to go back, I want to look at JC messages from 2023. Although it's not in the printout, I just enter through this. And it's printing out for me all the times it matches messages together and says, I think I have like a match. So these are 2 different messages. JC7 PSC was broadcast August 20th. JCITHG was broadcast September 10th. And it has a similar setup. These long EAMs have more text in common than you would think. And this is not random. Like there's a cutoff in the logic where it's not just going to show you like anything that I can find, but it basically says, if I offset a message, if I slide it around, that's why it's called EAM slider. What are the most matches between the sequences that I can find? If you have any background in biology or bioinformatics, very similar to the idea of like lining up DNA sequences. That's where I actually got the idea to do this. And it'll tell you how many matches it got. And just out of curiosity, you'll get an opportunity to mess around with the script. What I've noticed, if the offset is an even number, it's probably, it's more likely to be real. You can still have false positives. If there's an odd number as an offset, it's probably a false positive. So that's how EAM slider works. And if you're just curious, let's look at some of the more recent messages. So the current group 4 prefix, and what you call them, I really don't care. There are only 4 R2 messages so far. They started being broadcast on August 6th. The most recent was broadcast 2 days ago on the 17th, 3 days ago now. And their length has varied anywhere from 56 to 222 characters long. Let's take a look at those. Again, just whatever offset, and give me the minimum number of matches to report, which is 6. And this is the one that I posted about. So I didn't do that manually. I just ran the script and said, find me whether any of the messages already broadcast matched the one that came out on August 17th. And I said, yep, the one in August 11th matched. All right, this is just in alphabetical order. EAM character frequency analysis, EAM line graph, EAM replicate, EAM slider. These 4 scripts, which I found very helpful, that I would encourage you guys to use, that I spent a decent amount, well, one of them is fairly short and anyone could put together, but one of them actually paid for a cloud subscription and spent time tinkering with it to get it to work, and a select set of message transcriptions. Today, Folks, they're available for you to download. 4 scripts and a set of messages so that you actually have something to play around with and you understand how the thing would need to be formatted. How much do you think this would cost you? $100? $200? I hear someone in the audience that's willing to pay upwards of $500 for these powerful software programs that are combined as a suite that interacts with the exact same, comma separated value file rather than an Excel file. That just makes it easier, but you can also convert these to work with an Excel file. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, how much would you expect to pay for these? Well, nothing. I didn't make the slide correct. They're available now for free for a limited time on Dropbox. How do you get your hands on these scripts? tinyurl.com/EAM analysis software is a tiny URL link you can type in right now, and it'll take you to the Dropbox link. I think I made a flashing effect there. It's just 2 frames. That link is already in the video description, or if it's not, it'll be added at the end of the live stream. And you can download these, and just so that we can take a look at it quickly. So it's going to open automatically in Excel depending on how your computer is set up, and that's you can take a look at it and what it looks like and blah blah blah. And there are over almost 2,000 messages from 2023 for you to play around with, and there's also an Easter egg if you open this either in a note or like a text editor, or if you use IBM Plex Mono. There's an Easter egg. Anyways, that's something for you to look around. You guys can mess around with that. That is available for now for free. I'm not charging anyone anything for this. This is crazy. I spent a lot of time making these. This is how I do half my posts. But folks, I want you, if you transcribe EAMs or you do anything with EAMs, you got to start using this stuff, man. It's just not enough to just say, I heard an EAM. I'm providing you now these powerful tools so you can not just hear EAMs, but you can see them. All right, we've gone through 3 things today. We've gone through the August SKYMASTer, though we are preparing or predicting weeks in advance and telling you to tune in tomorrow to see what happens. We went through that. We also gave you, for anyone wondering what the heck is this channel doing, gave you an update telling you what is the actual impact and significance of this project. What is the point of you spending any time paying attention to NEET Intel? What's the point of me spending any time paying attention to NEET Intel? We talked about that. And for $0, I've given you 4 powerful scripts to analyze and contextualize EAMs. And I give you a set of messages to even try it out with. Fantastic. One more thing. A weapon to surpass Metal Gear. This has been a long-running theme or long-term goal of me spending time on this. I've referenced it only a few times. No one's taken me up on this, but over on the NEET Intel Patreon, if you sponsor me for $15,000 a month, I will build a weapon to surpass Metal Gear. I will find a way to do it, or I will refund you. But we'll figure it out. Give me $15,000 a month. Give it to me for a few months. We'll put something together for you. Another thing, this is a bit more what I actually mean when I say this. You guys may or may not have been paying attention, but at the end of September last year, I said I'm going to take a break to rework the actual script that I use to run the HFGCS coverage, which is on this YouTube channel's live stream, and or you just type in hfgcs.com and it takes you to that live stream. But actually tried messing with this auto refresh script that some of the UVB76 YouTube channels use, and I said I need to rework this to monitor the HFGCS using SDRs in the US. It needs to work better than how I've been doing it so far. And I spent a week or two, at least a week, I think 2 weeks. I just took time off from everything. I treated it like a full-time job and just worked with ChatGPT and said, I'll get this thing to work. And the first few days were rough. And then it was a solid week where I was making fantastic progress. I had this amazing script and then it just wasn't working. And trying to backtrack to find the last working version, I realized it wasn't actually doing what I thought it had been doing all along. So there was a solid week of what I thought was substantive progress. And this amazing thing that I'd put together, and I realized it was just a week of my life that accomplished nothing. So I had to backscale to what I'd managed to get done the first few days, I found a semi-working version that I was able to get with ChatGPT working somewhat. I improved it barely. I had to strip out all of these things that I added, and that has been working. That, for the most part, has been the script that's been used that you see when you tune into the live stream since October of last year. And if you're familiar, what you've seen on screen has been the Zhang Wanyang SKYMASTER Surveillance Committee Basic Refresh Script version 0.1. And the announcement today is that this weekend, thanks to Claude, we now have a version 0.2. And I'm just going to show this to you guys very quickly. No, we'll go into this with a little bit of depth. BRS v02.html. There is a very long and scary configuration. There's a very long and scary logic file. This HTML file is, I think, 10,000 lines, but we click it. I'm going to mute it just because we don't need that noise running all the time. What exactly are you looking at? Well, I mean, this, if you've been using Kiwi SDRs, the top, this is loaded one of the SDRs in North America that we use to monitor the HFGCS sometimes. That's totally fine. What are all these additional buttons? What is this input thing? Well, the input thing, you can still interact with the SDR, right? Like if I want to listen to 8992, I can just input 89. I don't need to use this bottom thing. But if I wanted to, I could input 8992 here. And it's just going to refresh. But it's just monitoring 8992. What else can I do here? So this right now is the continental US. And in the back end, there's logic, and it says these are the SDRs you can use. These are all the SDRs located in the continental US. If you guys know, this is in North Carolina. It says that right there, NC. So if I click Atlantic, it's still going to refresh, but it's going to go through the list of Atlantic SDRs. In this case, it's picked one in New Hampshire, which is in the far northeast corner of the United States, I think. It's definitely on the Atlantic side of things. Great, fine. What if I click Central? It's loading Kmart in Tennessee for me. Cool. Pacific. KPH, a popular California SDR. Great. I need to do that. No QE SDR is available. I mean, we're just on KPH, so that's just me clicking wrong buttons. It is finicky. It is finicky right now, but it's in a very workable condition. What this actually represents, if you think about the HFGCS stream, there is something similar with version 0.1 right now, where there's some extra stuff off screen that you can't see and just cropped out. So you have this nice-ish stream experience. But it works like garbage. It's very poor. If I'm ever like doing any live monitoring and I need to like switch SDRs on the fly or something, I have to like go and edit text files and stuff. This is letting me like if I wanted to say like I only want a central SDR right now, I have to go into a JavaScript file and either comment out or zero, like kind of null out all the Pacific and the Atlantic SDRs so the only central SDRs are left. Finally, thanks to Claude and no thanks to ChatGPT, which still struggles with this stuff. I don't really understand why. It's both filtering SDRs and also automatically generating these buttons for me based on what I have in the configuration file. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Some of these buttons are hard-coded in a sense, but some of them are not. So for example, if I click Japan because I decided to, just for testing purposes, add in a Japan SDR, if I click that, it's throwing me immediately to an SDR located in Tokyo. Fantastic. If I click a SDR international, I don't have anything programmed. I'll just click no receivers in list because I haven't added any, in air quotes, international SDRs yet. I don't know if you noticed the coverage buttons changed. Anime is just like a testing button I added in, but anime is only going to show up because I clicked international. In theory, I could have said like, this is South Africa or something. There's an SDR in South Africa. We sometimes go Australia. I could have programmed that in if I wanted. Not by hard coding the button in, but by adding an SDR to my list of SDRs and then saying this SDR is located in Australia, and then it'll get filtered to to international, and then that'll get added to the list of coverage. Europe, for example. Now, there are no receivers in the Europe list right now because I haven't added those in, but it would identify like United Kingdom, Germany, France, or like any other number of countries. And this is not in the HTML file. Like there's nothing in the HTML file saying that there are any SDRs here. These buttons are not hard-coded. They're based on the configuration file, which is fairly lightweight. It's only 200 lines of code. And it'll be very, very quick and easy for me to comment things in or out or use them or not. Something else here, you can also like comment in any like special custom lists you want. So East Asia. Well, if I have the continental US list active, it's not going to let me click East Asia. But if I have Japan active, then it'll let me click to East Asia, etc. If I'm in the US and I hard coded in that I want like a Lake Superior SDR, boom, this is an SDR located in Michigan. And it's doing that for me. If I want Alaska and British Columbia, immediately it loads for me an SDR in Alaska. Now, some of these buttons are for testing. I will just show you this quickly right now. These buttons over here, these you just quickly click. And again, these aren't hard-coded in either. These are just based on what's in the configuration file. So I typed into the database, like Charlie Echo is 9031. I have that in the configuration. Charlie Bravo, we heard a few weeks ago, is 11187. Same thing for some of the Zulu frequencies. These are all entered in. Now, obviously, you can just actually type in 9031 if you want. Or obviously, here in the SDR window, you can type in the frequency you want. But two more things I'll show you guys. So for the VLF, the very low frequency data transmissions, some of these are kind of hard coded in, but these are just, quick and easy shortcuts. And this is very nice and easy. And one little, I guess, like Easter egg, you can call it. It loads too quickly. Yeah, for a moment, you can kind of see that it's loading a very low frequency icon for you when you click one of these buttons. Now, there are some finicky problems with this. I don't want this button to be highlighted when I'm no longer in there. Like if I've been thrown out of that mode because the SDR wasn't available, it remains highlighted. But two other things, now these are also like hard-coded in, but they're hard-coded into the configuration file. Mode 02, you have to make sure that you're out of the VLF mode, unfortunately. So this is an SDR just for testing purposes. I hard-coded in. I see. Okay. That's mode 03. That's mode 02. It's just if the SDR is available, it's one specific SDR that's coded in for that. And I think yeah. If it's available and you click it, it'll load. If it's not, it's just going to tell you no receiver is available, and then I'll throw to the fallback. Now, I'm not using this for the live stream yet because we are expecting a SKYMASTER event tomorrow, and I don't want to use untested software out. But and even when I do go live with it, I'll probably go down for a day or two to rework OBS to work with a new version of the script. And then it'll be a live stream, and I'll essentially be beta testing for the new software. But the reason I'm showing you guys this, because you won't actually be able to tell that much has changed when you watch the live stream. It's going to look fairly similar. And it may, in some sense, also work fairly similar, but it should require less intervention from me than ever in a few ways. That's hard to explain, but it's one of those. Generally, I'm not very good at articulating that this project takes more time than you would think it would do. So I'm very excited about this. So I wanted to show you that for that reason. And you may be wondering, can I get my hands on this? The answer, unfortunately, is no. But for a handful of people who already have access to it. So I did do a surprise drop on Patreon 3 days ago. So anyone who is on the SKYMASTER tier or above has their hands on what is effectively the engine to this project. However, one of the things that happens in the Metal Gear Solid series is you ultimately release the weapons to surpass Metal Gear anyways. One day, when I'm done, and I will be done soon, everyone will get access to some form of this. And there will also be opportunities over the next few months to get access to this. And it'll just be based around things that I've asked people to do in the past. For example, when I've asked people, it's great and wonderful that you transcribe EAMs or something, but people suck at, like I've said this, I include myself in this, people suck at transcribing EAMs. It's good to have audio to verify, because if you ever happen to hear something like totally unprecedented on the HFGCS, like let's say today is like another September 11th happened, and you hear something crazy on the HFGCS and you don't record it, and people just have to take your word for it. I mean, listen, maybe that flies in 2001, but it's 2025, and it's just, I'm not happy with that. So that's been one of the goals of the project, is to get people to, if you like, level up. So if people start running streams of stuff and they do it effectively, like they don't do stupid streams where they're just constantly talking and yammering over it and there's no value added, and I can't watch, like, if I stop doing this project and I want to be able to like check in a few months, be like, well, what's going on with the HFGCS? Does anyone have this stuff covered? The only person right now is Null, I think, who has this continuous streams going. I would probably be happy to extend this version of the script to him, but other people's like, what's, all I'm doing if I give this to you is not much. So we're not there yet. This has sort of been a quick tutorial for them in case they watch this later to figure out what exactly are you looking at, and what is the significance of it. It's very much provisional, but this, if it's very good. All right, I'm losing myself here. So yes, basic refresh script version 0.2. Live testing will begin this week on hfgcs.com. That is the link to the live stream of the HFGCS that runs 24/7. And the full script and logic was already dropped to SKYMASTER tier supporters on Patreon over the weekend. And just so that we're clear, that was for people who are already SKYMASTER members. If you go ahead and become a SKYMASTER member today, I thought it would be unfair because the current people who are on that level have been there, and that's been a fairly high level. And they've been on that for a few years. And I thought I should do something for them. So that is exclusive to them, and future opportunities for other people to get access to this or some version of this will be revealed over the next few months. So that is a summer update. We went through 4 things. So we have the SKYMASTER forecast tomorrow, gave you an update about, what exactly is going on with this project, gave you 4 scripts for free, almost 2,000 messages to play around with. So that on its own should be more than enough for people who are interested in all this to take a look at it. And for the people who have supported this project for a long time, there's your surprise drop. Me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm done. I am fleeing to Mutsuko. I am taking all the money. I am running away. You will never hear from me again.